Hi everybody, Vanquished Angel here, and today's topic is going to be another political one. However, I find it kind of fascinating. And I was having a discussion, conservatives versus liberal, because I like to hear both sides, and I like to go over both sides, and some people have some very good points, and some of the conversations are very interesting. They're not just always, you're stupid, and you're a big dumbhead. Well, okay, a lot of times they are, but not always. And sometimes they're productive. And I sometimes don't realize the thoughts that I have, other people really don't always think of. And so, or maybe they do, it's just not vocalized. And so this one was really interesting to me, is the way it went in the conversation anyway. So I'm just going to kind of speak what the thought was on this here. And I said that America's government, and this has kind of been my theory a lot lately, America's government is severely outdated. And I said that, and then someone called me out on that, and they're like, what do you mean? Because, you know, Americans defend their government constantly. Most of them do. Some do, some don't, I guess. But they're a group who does. And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, well, our government system was designed back in the days of horse and buggy. And so, therefore, a lot of our structure inside the government is designed around a world that at best was horse and buggy at the time. So we have all these representatives, and we have Congress, and we have the state level government, and we have all these layers of people that essentially were initially put there because the American people couldn't travel weeks or maybe even months at a time to make it to a destination to have an impact or a direct say on what went on with our government and our laws. But today that's irrelevant because we do have that ability now thanks to technology. So 200 years ago, the system that America developed was perfect for the time. However, today, thanks to technology, we see a lot of cracks in this. We see a lot of issues with this. And I feel that the American public actually can have more power in its government than what it does today. And I think both sides can agree on that. I think that we can trim the fat due to technology bringing us into the future, and I think that we need to find ways of doing that. So I'm not saying we will eliminate all these representatives, but I do think that public opinion should carry more weight than what it does. Okay, so 200 years ago, because people couldn't represent themselves, they couldn't, leave the farm and travel weeks or months maybe at a time, we had to hire representatives to do this for us and essentially speak for us. And that was basically a requirement at the time that America's government was formed. However, the problem with that we see today is that they get elected, they basically run a reality TV show these days, and they get elected, but once they're in their position, they don't always represent us, or they do whatever they want at that time. They don't even have to take public opinion into play. So the way it's set up is that the American people who believe they have a say, actually their say is indirect. And because it's indirect, they don't have to follow it. So we elect this person, we cross our fingers and hope and pray that they will act in the best interest of the American people. But as we see oftentimes, this isn't the case. We also have political coups, like, the Democrats take over one time and then the Republicans take over one time, and basically they shut out in a sort of winner-takes-all sort of way, similar to the Electoral College or whatever else. It's kind of a winner-take-all. For the Electoral College, it's whoever wins the state takes all the Electoral College votes. This really isn't representative of the people. Not to involve a conversation about the Electoral College, but that's kind of an example. So we have, a president that comes in and replaces everybody with Republicans or Democrats or whatever, what have you. The opposite side loses their say. And this isn't exactly representative of the American people. And I think today we need to reform our government. I think we need to restructure it. This probably wouldn't go over well, but I do think it needs to happen, and I think we need to start taking action to make that happen. We might not get rid of all of our representatives per se, but why doesn't the public opinion have a direct weigh in on the laws and stuff that's made? Why isn't it worth so many votes on the subject? So maybe it's not the final say, but I think that it should have a direct weight, not an indirect weight. So I think when a vote comes in, or laws get made, or something, of the territory that it's for, all of America per se, or even just in that state or whatever, I think the public opinion should have a weight. And it might be weighted. So, because I understand there might be ways where 100% public opinion might not be exactly what the people want, though I think that that's rare. And it might always shut out the minority. I do think that it should have weight, a direct weight. And then I think that would allow us to trim the fat from our government. We don't really actually need all these representatives. And also due to this, a lot of our governmental systems and ways, just using the Electoral College as an example because it's already one there, but that doesn't mean that this is the exact one. A lot of those imbalances could be thrown out. We wouldn't actually need them. So, per se, like the Electoral College, that's a system that was instituted, in my belief, because cities had more people. Therefore, they were easier to access to get votes and weigh-ins. Whereas the people out on the farm that couldn't leave the farm, back in horse and buggy days, weren't able to. So things like the Electoral College gives them more weight for the voices that do make it. That's kind of my theory as to why we have those imbalances, and most of those imbalances favor what would typically today be the red states, but not necessarily always that. Sometimes it is blue states that get favored by these imbalances. And this works out, I think, to the negative side of both. And then with this winner takes all thing, those people, their voices that are in those states, say California, we'll use that as an example, those conservatives kind of lost their weight because it's a winner takes all system. I think that if public opinion had weight, more weight, on laws, no matter what, all people can be heard. Doesn't matter what political party is in power. They still have a way for their voice to be heard. And I think that we should incorporate something like this. So let's say Obama was in office and totally did a Democratic takeover of everything, and everybody got replaced. It was all Democrats. Or all liberals, because there is liberal conservatives. The conservatives, or sorry, there is liberal Republicans. The conservatives' voice doesn't get heard. It gets overlooked. Well, I do think a lot of liberals do take the other voice, and vice versa, maybe others do. But you kind of get what I'm saying, is that it limits who gets heard. And I think that we do need to restructure our government. And a lot of people will say, now is not the time, now is not this, we got to do that. Now is the time, because we are limited. So it may super suck for us that has to deal with it right now, but a lot of us have children, and a lot of us are going to have grandchildren, or do have grandchildren, and we need to stop thinking about us and saying things like, now's not the time, and we need to start thinking about them and making the future for them. Do you think George Washington said, now's not the time, when the British made war? And I think we lost that aspect in American culture today, and I think that's used against us. But I do think that we need to push for the American people to have more of a direct say in what goes on in their government, not indirect. We don't live in horse and buggy times anymore. That system, I believe, is old and archaic. Alright, well, that's just my opinion. Thanks for listening, and subscribe if you liked it, or don't. Have a good day.